welcome. Welcome, guys. Welcome. Okay, so I'm in 2 Chronicles, and I'm going to be reading chapters 1 to 5 in 2 Chronicles. So we left off reading the last chapters of Chronicles, which was chapters, I think, 25 to 29 we read. And that was explaining David's reign and all the events that kind of led up to David becoming king, right? So we have now come to the end of First Chronicles, where it tells us now that the death of David, he's died, and now we're moving on to Solomon, King Solomon's reign, into Chronicles. So the reason why, sorry for the silence, the reason why I do these Bible studies is to encourage others to get into the Bible, to encourage others to seek a relationship with God. And I'm really just taking this time to really learn, right? So I'm really focusing on building my foundation solid, and my relationship with Christ. And what better way to get into my Bible, right? So, even though King David went through a lot of hardships, he didn't let that ruin his relationship with God, right? So God is refining us when we go through a tough season. He's transforming us for something better, a new beginning. So, David had a lot of enemies. David was hi Thiago. David did go through a lot of suffering, right? But when it came to Solomon's reign, he got rest. He got rest, and he got to build the temple, right? The temple that David had left for Solomon to set up. So there was no reason or any excuse for Solomon to build a temple. So again, we're in 2 Chronicles. Now 2 Chronicles is, we're going into Solomon's reign, and then we're going into all the other kings, right? That kings of Judah. So the difference between Kings and Samuel's, because some of the events will overlap each other, is Kings talks about Judah and Samaria, right? So it talks about Judah and Israel, whereas 2 Chronicles is solely focused on the kings of Judah and Solomon's reign. So again, we have to remember that the audience is for the remaining Israelites, for the remnant who are coming back to build the temple after the exile. So that's what this audience is for. So it's just to give them hope. It's just to help them get through. Hey Zane, how are you? Thank you for coming through. Hey Frankie Frog, thank you for coming through. Yeah, it's just to let the Israelites, the remaining Israelites, know that there is hope in building a temple, but there's some history behind why the temple in the first place got taken down, and so it's just good for them to know. So just bear that in mind when you're reading the history books. Just make sure you know the audience that it's speaking to, so you can have a better understanding of why the book was written. So we're in 2 Chronicles, and I'm reading chapters 1 to 5. This is chapter 1. Solomon, son of David, established himself firmly over his kingdom, for the Lord his God was with him and made him exceedingly great. Then Solomon spoke to all Israel, to the commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds, to the judges and to all the leaders in Israel, the heads of families. And Solomon and the whole assembly went to the high place at Gibeon, for God's tent of meeting was there, which Moses the Lord's servant had made in the wilderness. Now David had brought up the ark of God from Kiriath Jearim to the place he had prepared for it, because he had pitched a tent, pitched a tent for it in Jerusalem. But the bronze altar that Bezalel son of Uri the son of Hur had made was in Gibeon in front of the tabernacle of the Lord. So Solomon and the assembly were inquired of him there. Solomon went up to the bronze altar before the Lord in the tent of meeting and offered 1,000 burnt offerings on it. That night God appeared to Solomon and said to him, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." Solomon answered God, "You have shown great kindness to David my father, and have made me king in his place. Now, Lord God, let your promise to my father David be confirmed, for you have made me king over a people who are as numerous as the dust of the earth. Give me wisdom and knowledge that I may lead this people, for who is able to govern this great people of yours?" God said to Solomon, "Since this is your heart's desire, and you have not asked for wealth, possessions, or honor, nor for the death of your enemies, and since you have not asked for a long life, but for wisdom and knowledge to govern my people over whom I made you king, therefore wisdom and knowledge will be given to you. And I will also give you wealth, possessions, and honor, such as no king who was before you ever had, and none after you will have." Then Solomon went to Jerusalem from the high place at Gibeon, from before the tent of meeting, and he reigned over Israel. Solomon accumulated chariots and horses. He had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horses, which he kept in the chariot cities, and also with him in Jerusalem. The king made silver and gold as common in Jerusalem as stones, and cedar as plentiful as sycamore fig trees in the foothills. Solomon's horses were imported from Egypt and from Kir. The royal merchants purchased them from Kir at the current price. They imported a chariot from Egypt for 600 shekels of silver, and a horse for 150. They also exported them to all the kings of the Hittites and of the Armenians. Chapter 2. Solomon gave orders to build a temple for the name of the Lord and a royal place for himself. He conscripted 70,000 men as chariots and 80,000 as stonecutters in the hill, and 3,600 as foremen over them. Solomon sent this message to Hiram, king of Tyre: "Send me cedar logs as you did for my father David when you sent him cedar to build a palace to live in. Now I'm about to build a temple for the name of the Lord my God, and to dedicate it to him for burning fragrance incense before him, for setting out the consecrated bread regularly, and for making burnt offerings every morning and evening, and on the Sabbath, at the new moons, and at the appointed festivals of the Lord our God. This is a lasting ordinance for Israel. The temple I'm going to build will be great, because our God is greater than all other gods. But who is able to build a temple for him, since the heavens, even the highest heavens, cannot contain him? Who then am I to build a temple for him, except as a place to burn sacrifices before him? Send me, therefore, a man skilled to work in gold and silver, bronze and iron, and in purple, crimson, and blue yarn, and experienced in the art of engraving to work in Judah and Jerusalem with my skilled who workers whom my father David provided. Send me also cedar, juniper, and algum logs from Lebanon, for I know that your servants are skilled in cutting timber there. My servants shall work with yours to provide me with plenty of timber, because the temple I built must be large and magnificent. I will give your servants the woodsmen who cut the timber 20,000 cores of ground wheat, 20,000 cores of barley, 20,000 baths of wine, and 20,000 baths of olive oil. Hiram, king of Tyre, replied by letter to Solomon, because the Lord loves his people, he has made you their king. And Hiram added, praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, who made heaven and earth. He has given King David a wise son, endowed with intelligence and discernment, who will build a temple for the Lord and a palace for himself. I am sending you Hiram Abai, a man of great skill, whose mother was from Dan and whose father was from Tyre. He is trained to work in gold and silver, bronze and iron, stone and wood, and with purple and blue and crimson yarn and fine linen. He is experienced in all kinds of engraving and can execute any design given to him. He will work with your skilled workers and with those of my Lord David your father. Now let my Lord send his servants the wheat and barley and the olive oil and wine pressed he promised. And we will cut all the logs from Lebanon that you need and will float them as rafts by sea down to Joppa. You can then take them up to Jerusalem. Solomon took a census of all the foreigners residing in Israel after the census his father had taken, and they were found to be 153,600. He assigned 70,000 of them to be carriers and 80,000 to be stonecutters in the hill, with 3,600 foremen over them to keep the people working. Chapter 3. Then Solomon began to build the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem on Mount Moriah, where the Lord had appeared to his father David. It was on the threshing floor of Aruna, the Jebusite, the place provided by David. He began building on the second day of the second month in the 4th year of his reign. So that is where David went to basically ask God for forgiveness after taking the census, right? He shouldn't have taken the census, and he brought wrath on Israel, right? And he bought this threshing floor. He went to ask for God's forgiveness to stop, harming the rest of the Israelites because of his, decision to take the census because of his sin, right? So he basically that's where David went to say, I'm sorry, forgive me. And then God said, okay, I give you mercy. The foundation Solomon laid for building the temple of God was 60 cubits long and 20 cubits wide, using the cubit of the old standard. The portico at the front of the temple was 20 cubits long across the width of the building and 20 cubits high. He overlaid the inside with pure gold. He paneled the main hall with juniper and covered it with fine gold and decorated it with palm tree and chain designs. He adorned the temple with precious stones, and the gold he used was gold of Parvaim. He overlaid the ceiling beams, door frames, walls, and doors of the temple with gold, and he carved cherubim on the walls. He built the most holy place. Its length corresponded to the width of the temple, 20 cubits long and 20 cubits wide. He overlaid the inside with 600 talents of fine gold. The gold nails weighed 50 shekels. He also overlaid the upper parts with gold. For the most holy place, he made a pair of sculptured cherubim and overlaid them with gold. The total wingspan of the cherubim was 20 cubits. One wing of the first cherubim was 5 cubits long and touched the temple wall, while its other wing, also 5 cubits long, touched the wing of the other cherubim. Similarly, one of the second cherubim was 5 cubits long and touched the other temple wall, and its other wing, also 5 cubits long, touched the wing of the first cherub. The wings of the first cherubim extended 20 cubits. They stood on their feet, facing the main hall. He made the curtain of blue, purple, and crimson yarn and fine linen with cherubim worked into it. For the front of the temple, he made 2 pillars, which together were 35 cubits long, each with a capital 5 cubits high. He made interwoven chains and put them on top of the pillars. He also made 100 pomegranates and attached them to the chains. He erected the pillars in the front of the temple, pillars in the front of the temples, one to the south and one to the north. The one to the south he named Jachin, and the one to the north Boaz. Chapter 4. He made a bronze altar 20 cubits long, 20 cubits wide, and 10 cubits high. He made the sea of cast metal circular in shape, measuring 10 cubits from rim to rim and 5 cubits high. It took a line of 30 cubits to measure around it. Below the rim, figures of bulls encircled it, 10 to a cubit. The bulls were cast into 2 rows in one piece with the sea. The sea stood on 12 bulls, 3 facing north, 3 facing west, 3 facing south, and 3 facing east. The sea rested on top of them, and their hindquarters were towards the center. It was a handbreadth in thickness, and its rim was like the rim of a cup, like a lily blossom. It held 3,000 baths. He then made 10 basins for washing and placed 5 on the south side and 5 on the north. In them the things to be used for the burnt offerings were rinsed, but the sea was to be used by the priests for washing. He made 10 gold lampstands according to the specifications for them, and placed them in the temple, 5 on the south side and 5 on the north. He made 10 tables and placed them in the temple, 5 on the south side and 5 on the north. He also made 100 sprinkling bowls. He made the courtyard of the priests and the large court and the doors for the court, and overlaid the doors with bronze. He placed the sea on the south side at the southeast corner, and Hiram also made the pots and shovels and sprinkling bowls. So Hiram finished the work he had undertaken for King Solomon in the temple of God. The 2 pillars, the 2 bowl-shaped capitals on top of the pillars, the 2 sets of network decorating the 2 bowl-shaped capitals on top of the pillars, the 400 pomegranates for the 2 sets of network, 2 rows of pomegranates for each network decorating the bowl-shaped capitals on top of the pillars, the stands with their basins, the sea and the 12 balls under it, the pots, shovels, meat forks, and all related articles. All the objects that Hiram Abai made for King Solomon for the temple of the Lord were of polished bronze. The king had them cast in clay molds in the plain of the Jordan between Succoth and Zarethan. All these things that Solomon made amounted to so much that the weight of the bronze could not be calculated. Solomon also made all the furnishings that were in God's temple: the golden altar, the tables on which the bread of the presence, the lampstand of pure gold with their lamp to burn in front of the inner sanctuary as prescribed, the gold floor work and lampstands and tongs, they were solid gold. The pure gold wick trimmings, sprinkling bowls, dishes, and censers, and the gold doors of the temple, the inner doors to the most holy place, and the doors of the main hall. Chapter 5. When all the work of Solomon done for the temple of the Lord was finished, he brought in the things his father had dedicated, the silver and gold and all the furnishings, and he placed them in the treasuries of God's temple. Then Solomon summoned to Jerusalem the elders of Israel, all the heads of the tribes and chiefs of the Israelites families, to bring up the ark of the Lord's covenant from Zion, the city of David. And all the Israelites came together to the king at the time of the festival in the 7th month. When all the elders of Israel had arrived, the Levites took up the ark, and they brought up the ark and the tent of the meeting and all the sacred furnishings in it. the Levitical priests carried them up, and King Solomon and the entire assembly of Israel that had gathered about were before the ark, sacrificing so many sheep and cattle that they could not be recorded or counted. The priest then brought the ark of the Lord's covenant to its place in the inner sanctuary of the temple, the most holy place, and put it beneath the wings of the cherubim. The cherubim spread their wings over the place of the ark and covered the ark and its carrying poles. These poles were so long that their ends extended from the ark could be seen from in front of the inner sanctuary, but not from outside the holy place, and they are still there today. There was nothing in the ark except the two tablets that Moses had placed in it at Horeb. So somewhere along the line, I guess the things that were in the ark got lost, because there was the manna, I believe, and Aaron's rod, right? So now it's come to King Solomon's time, and there's only the tablets that Moses had in the ark. So, I guess it had been mistreated so much, right? That it's the sacred stuff that was actually in it had been removed. That kind of just puts into perspective how they disrespected it a little bit, didn't think nothing much of the ark, right? Even though it was really holy. So I mean, I don't know how much people, I have to look out, I don't know how much people would have died to get in the ark, because as you can see, when Isaiah, I think, touched the ark when it dropped, and God instantly made him go right because he wasn't a Levite. It makes me think how much people that tried to go in the ark or touch the ark died because they didn't realize how holy it was. So it just goes to show that the ark wasn't respected as it should be, right? Where the Lord made a covenant with the Israelites after they came out of Egypt. The priests then withdrew from the holy place. All the priests who were there had consecrated themselves regardless of their divisions. All the Levites who were musicians, Asaph, Heman, Jeduthun, and their sons and relatives stood on the east side of the altar, dressed in fine linen and playing cymbals, harp, and lyres. They were accompanied by 120 priests sounding trumpets. The trumpeters and musicians joined in unison to give praise and thanks to the Lord. Accompanied by trumpets, cymbals, and other instruments, the singers raised their voice in praise to the Lord and sang, "He is good, his love endures forever." Then the temple of the Lord was filled with the cloud, and the priests could not perform their service because of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord filled the temple of God. The end. So it just goes to show, because we know so far that the temple was destroyed in Jerusalem, right? And I think what's so sad about it is that God chose to dwell there. He didn't have to dwell there. As it said, you can't contain him. Not even the high heavens could contain him, right? So God chose to dwell in that temple, and the Israelites abused it, right? They mistreated God, and they didn't respect him, right? They didn't respect his holiness, which is quite sad, because God chose to dwell in that place, and he didn't have to dwell in the temple. He didn't really have to do that. He did it because he loved the Israelites. He wanted fellowship with them. He wanted to be close to them. He wanted a relationship with them. But as we've seen in Kings, it didn't really go that way. They just got more and more and more evil. They just got more away from God. They rejected God, right? So we can kind of see why the temple got burned down in the first place, right? But then we see before that how the temple was made in all its glory, and King David had set everything up in preparation for this moment, and all Solomon had to do was build a temple, get everybody in their right place, because as I said, King David had already sorted and assigned everybody, the Levites and everyone, to do their specific role, and King Solomon just really had to just carry it out, right? So we it's just really a contrast of how, you know, when they first made the temple, that they were dedicated and they was happy to have God dwell there, and then by the end they were so far away from God that God was so angry with their evilness that he had to remove them from their sight, right? Hence why we're going in Chronicles right now to play these events for those who are going to now rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, right? So it's good for them to know, the remnant, the remaining few who are out of exile. It's good for them to know, um, you know, the temple prior and the roles everybody had, so they're quite understanding of, you know, how to build a temple, what roles people had, and just understand the temple before, you know, it got burnt down in all its holiness, right? So yeah, I know it's a lot, you know, I know the history books are a lot to go through, but honestly, every book that kind of makes sense for its own right. So it gives you an understanding, it gives you a bigger picture of like the whole Bible, right? It gives you a bigger picture. So it's good to, you know, don't skip. And I know you may think it's a boring part of the Bible, right? But don't skip it, read through it, persevere through it, and read through it. Just read through it, okay? So I'm going to end it there. Thank you for those who came out. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for those who listened. I really, really appreciate it. I'll be back on Friday to do the next chapters of Chronicles. Yeah, and I'll see you all then. Thank you again. Bye.